Hello, YouTube. How are you? We're sorry for the late start tonight. We're gonna bring in our friends over at Twitch, and then we will get down to business. By God! All right, here we go. Let's start recording. Why don't we do that? Yes, good idea. Recording. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, coming to you in 1080p magnificence. Why the upgrade, you ask? Well, it's simple. I'm concerned that at 720, the full extent of this lightning strike on the head is not going to be visible, so I wanted to up the resolution so that everybody could get a good look at it. Lots of fun stuff to talk about, some serious stuff, mostly fun stuff. Good to see everybody. I have a couple of cool a couple of cool Strata ideas. So let's just start in no particular order here, I suppose. So yeah, it looks like I just walked out of a hurricane. So let me tell you because the subject of my hair is probably the most commonly discussed, and certainly to me the most important subject that we cover here on the Stratosphere Lounge. So let me just give you a little moment why this looks as shocking and frankly cool as it does. So I have extremely curly hair, very, very, very curly hair. When it gets wet, it just goes really, really, really curly hair. And most of the time, get a haircut every month or every 6 weeks or so. And most of the time I can slap it into, submission without too many chemicals. This is why I worry about an oil shortage, by the way, is the lack of the ability to refine chemicals for hair products. But every now and then, I have to take the hair and beat it into submission. And I don't mean just slap it around a minute. I mean like strap it down to a kind of like a stocks, and beat it to within an inch of its life. And that's exactly what happened. So that's why it looks the way it does. Speaking of hair, see what I did there. Last night, we're recording this on 15th of February, so last night would have been Valentine's Day, and it was. And Natasha and I spent a terrific Valentine's Day, although an unconventional one. We went to an LA fashion show. It's called the LA Fashion Show. It's a relatively small event down in Culver City, not a big star. In fact, about as far from a star-studded evening as you could possibly get. Why was I at the LA Fashion Show, you might ask? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because Natasha had been offered a place at this event on a floor above where the fashion show was happening. She's gone out with her paintings a couple times, but in true Natasha fashion, just when I'm slowly beginning to come off of being amazed at how great her painting is or whatever her photography is, she just decides to start with something completely new and then just immediately be excellent at it. So what she basically did was she's been making jewelry. My house has gone from a painting studio to a jewelry factory, or fabric, as they say, in Russia. So she just decided that she wanted to do it and bought some of these crystals online and got them arranged, and they look great. And then we just had to learn how to solder. When I say we, I mean she. What I remember about soldering, I remember from, of course, my dear friend Phil Trick, who, when I was, I guess it must have been my 14th birthday, got me I think it was a Texas Instruments kit from Radio Shack. I remember there was a pair of headphones, and I remember there was an amplifier, and one was called Pro 4AA, and the other was called AA14, and for the life of me, I can't remember which is which, but I think the amp was the AA14. Anyway, Phil showed me how to solder, how easy it is to solder, because Phil's an electrical engineer. So he picked up the soldering iron and just immediately went to soldering stuff, and I just basically just had the decency to not, smack him, but basically say, "Get out of my way, you idiot. This is so simple, anybody could do it." Turns out it's not. It's actually really, 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 really tricky stuff, this soldering. And so for Natasha, the back of these crystals have a metal backing. Not only metal, they've got nickel, so it's not nickel backing. It's not very sticky. And she said that the jewelry makers solder these things together. And I said, honey, I got to tell you, Bill's first try burned his fingers. You damn right it did, Eric. Burned my finger. Absolutely, yes. I don't think there's anybody in the world who ever picked up a soldering iron who did not at some point burn themselves the first time, and then at that point afterwards, the percentages get better. But you're damn right I burned my fingers the first time. So anyway, excuse me one second. See, it's just not, you know. Yeah, it's what it's doing. What can I say? All right, so she started soldering with a soldering iron. Now it's tough there because when by the way, my attempt at soldering the exceedingly simple circuit board is not even a circuit board. The kit came with a circuit board, and it came with a number of transistors. And Phil told me how they were all color coded. You know, the little bands around them told you what it did. I'm sure this technology is now in the Museum of Antiquated Electronics or whatever. However, after attempting to solder 3 or 4 of these connections, pretty simple soldering really. You know, you got this gigantic lead coming out of the transistor. It's just sitting there. You got plenty of room. It's not like it's a inexpensive amplifier kit. Plenty of room to make mistakes. That's why it's a kit. And after about, I don't know, nearly destroying 3 or 4 of the transistors, I just said, could you kind of do this? And Phil, being Phil, said no. So I realized how tough it was, and I got better at it. But what Natasha has to do is much tougher because she's got these, instead of just, you got a lead going through a circuit board, just touching it, put a little solder there, she has to actually solder separate things together. She has to make a bridge across the back of them. And that's a lot harder, especially with nickel back stuff, because the solder just beads on it and stuff. And she was told that in order to do this more effectively, yeah, it does, Eric. I just didn't feel like it. In order to do this effectively, as Steve Whoop keeps saying, flux. Everybody's saying flux. That's great advice. Thank you. What's flux? She took some classes on soldering for jewelry, and she discovered that rather than using a soldering iron, it's much better to use what I'll just call in my ignorance a heat gun. It just blows hot air, very, very, very hot air over a very, very tiny little area. It's like the world's smallest blow dryer, except it gets to 700 or 800 Fahrenheit. Excuse me one second. From our friend Whittleton over there. Thank you for the 5-hour lounge last time. It was worth 2 commutes worth of listening to. The Emperor protects. The Emperor does protect. And remind me about that, Whittleton. Thank you very much for the super chat, by the way, because I have just about finished the Horus Heresy, and I wanted to. We'll talk about that on Monday because I'll be done by then. I've only got about 20 pages to go. Well, the flux capacitor. Well, obviously, I know what a flux capacitor is. Jeez. So anyway, she once we got this hot gun, it got a lot easier. And flux is resin or borax. Okay. Oh, that's the stuff you clean it with. Yeah. So I think. So anyway, she went from the soldering iron, which was tough, to the soldering hot gun, which is magic as far as the work she's doing. The fact that she's doing the work at all is magic to me. I mean, I just come out every day and I just not only see these. It's costume jewelry. It's large stuff, and it's just very, very, very colorful and striking, and now she's just cranking out, I don't know, 20 a day or something like that. So we got a chance to go and have lay out a table with her jewelry on it. So we went to the LA Fashion Show, which was on the 2nd floor. All of the 5 or 6 booths that were on the 3rd floor. So there wasn't a whole lot of traffic there, to be perfectly honest with you. But 2 things happened. One of them was I got a chance to see what is passing for LA fashion, and I've come to the realization, not for the first time, that I live in arguably the most vulgar town on the face of the planet, certainly in Los Angeles. It wasn't always this bad, but this has never been a stylish city. It's always been just a goat rodeo of people trying too hard. New York, on the other hand, can be pretty groovy. And the reason I mentioned that in relation to the hair is, as we were packing up at the end of the night, there was a man there, homosexual gentleman. I'd be willing to bet a significant amount of money on, although I don't have any particular proof of that. But if I had to bet, that's definitely what I would say. Gigantic black man who was probably 6'7", something. He's huge, huge guy, and he's wearing a nearly floor length. It's like looked like a mink trench coat with a hoodie, and then some kind of shirt in the front, and he was just walking around, and I'd been watching him all night, and I just walked up to him as we're packing up, and I said to him, "Hey, sir, sorry to bother you. I got to tell you, there are very, very, very few people in the world who can pull that off, and you're one of them." And he said, "Well, thank you, brother. I like your haircut." I said, "Thanks, man." So much for this, this country at war with itself, with our endless hatreds and desire to murder each other. All of this stuff is enforced from above. It's all pushed down below, to us below. It's all a lie, and people are nice all over. I'll say this before I forget it, because I still have to make the main point about the jewelry thing. It's been my experience, and I have not seen any exceptions to this. I didn't realize this until about 2011, might have been 11, somewhere around there, I think 10 or 11, when I got my first paid speaking event. And I'll get to the solar eclipse, astronaut. Calm yourself. Calm thyself. Because when you say something like that, I'll lose my train of thought. So, okay, yes, 2011, and I was doing, I think it was it was my first paid speaking event. It was at Southern Utah University, and then another one that's in Salt Lake City, but it's not Brigham Young. It's University. I'm sorry to say, I don't remember. Two universities in Utah. I was asked to come up. First public speaking event I ever did where I got paid, and that was my first real exposure, over, period of 8 hours of dealing with Mormons. And I'm not criticizing anybody or anybody's religion or anything, but I'll tell you, I have consistently found that Mormons are the best people on the planet. I've never, ever met people that were so decent and accommodating. The reason I say this is because the guy who got us the chance to see the first Rose Bowl parade. Good. B-Fire says I went to Southern Utah University. The gentleman who told Natasha, who Natasha had met, who had a parking lot for us there waiting for the Rose Bowl parade, my first ever Rose Bowl parade, just a month ago or so, a month and a half ago. Turns out he was a Mormon, a guy named Jed, which is a damn good name for a Mormon, and Jed is the kind of guy who cannot see a problem without fixing it. He just can't. And this is the thing I admire the most about these people, utter complete strangers. He just can't. And so the person who Natasha first met, who brought a lot more art than Natasha did, I would say she brought probably 12 or it seems like about 12 times the total amount of gear that we brought. So we're helping this woman named Aziza. No, we're not Russian woman. We're not going to use any last names here because we don't want anybody, spamming the place. So at the end of the night, Natasha says, "We really need to help Aziza move this stuff out." And I said, "Absolutely, that's great." So Jed and I, who it turns out is a steely-eyed missile man, start carrying these enormous wooden easels and tons of all of these paintings. We've already gotten Natasha's stuff, downstairs and ready to go. And we just making trip after trip after trip. This little tiny woman must have gotten those things upstairs by herself. It must have taken her 2 hours, just like a little ant, moving one piece at a time. So we got a couple of, brawny guys like me and Jim and Jed, and who's the brawniest, who can say. But anyway, we we moved all of this gear down for her, and it took us about 25 minutes, the two of us, moving all of this stuff down. As just enormous amounts of stuff. And these easels that she had were huge, huge easels, and they were solid. What, I nearly threw my back out because I'm so used to picking up the one that Natasha has. It's just so light. And I picked this thing up almost by the end. I was like, good Lord, is this thing made out of uranium? What is this thing? So anyway, we get... Jed and I get all of these heavy stuff downstairs. We get all the paintings downstairs. Aziza goes outside. We start loading the easels in the back. Everybody gets all the things in there. It took us about a half an hour, longer than it would have taken us just to walk. Candace Mas Macho, exactly. Ronan, exactly. And so here's the moral of the story. We got her loaded up at this event. And great seeing you. Thanks for being here. Yeah, and she was so grateful. She was just so grateful. And then Natasha and I are turning to go to the car, and Jim says, so why don't you give me your address to Aziza? What? Yeah, just give me your address so I'll just follow you home, and I'll help you unload it. And I was impressed. Natasha and Aziza were floored. I was impressed. They were floored. And that's what he did. He followed this complete stranger home, unloaded her car, and then went home. And they were both so blown away. I wasn't blown away. I was impressed, but I wasn't blown away. And I got in the car with Natasha and we closed the door and she said, that was amazing. I said, yeah, half of that's being American and the other half being an American man, I said, and the other half is being Mormon, I think. But in any event, it was really impressive. So here's the fun stuff about the event, actually the event. So I looked around and I figured maybe 40 people came to the floor, total, right? To the floor. Not just to Natasha's booth, just to the floor. 40 people. Yeah, Welfare Square is an amazing place. An amazing place. And of the 40 people that came up to the floor, every one of them came to the table where the jewelry is, and significant numbers of people spent about 20 minutes there. So with an audience of with a potential market of maybe 40, she sold 5 pieces out of 40. That's a bloody marvelous sales ratio. I mean, that's really impressive. So those are actually the first things that she created, that she sold, other than her photography, obviously. And I'm just so proud of her, and I'm just so happy, because I saw this stuff being made and I thought, man, people are going to buy this. And then we finally took it out into the world, and it turned out, yeah, people are going to buy this. So couldn't be prouder of her, and that was what we did last night. So hooray. Now, last week, as you recall, I missed that so much from Lost in Space. Last week, as you recall, we did the 5-hour epic show. And I want to answer 2 things that came with that. And then I got some new ideas, and then we'll take some questions, he says, with a straight face, fully meaning it. I got a couple of emails in, and I just answered them. One of the reasons why I was late, because I just got lost writing this. But one of them was from our friend, I have to get my cogitation spectacles on here. Hang on a second. I remembered the Ralph Capera, who wrote us, and after I talked about the immigration heartbreak we had with my stepdaughter and Natasha's daughter Deanna, who was turned down over 7 years for a tourist visa to the U.S. twice. And I'll spare you the details because I'm very, very grateful for the details. But Ralph wrote me a whole page of stuff and basically said that I need to take this story to Ted Cruz. Now, I've done a number of events for Ted Cruz. I did one event for Ted Cruz, and I did a number of them with Ted Cruz. So I wouldn't say Ted and I are like close friends, but he did walk across the airport once to grab my attention, so I really like him. And I think he's a good man. And what Ralph pointed out was, he said that unlike before, when we got rejected in 2017, when Natasha's application for permanent residency was still in the machine, you know, we've got, we're both U.S. citizens now. And basically what Ralph was saying is, and he didn't limit it to Ted either, he mentioned a bunch of other people. You know, he mentioned Ben Shapiro, and he even mentioned Megyn Kelly and so on. But he said I should talk to Ted Cruz about this, and he said the reason you should talk to Ted Cruz about this is because it puts a face on legal immigration. And I never thought about that before. I'd always thought, well, maybe I can pull a string. I felt bad enough about pulling a string for the flight surgeon thing with the FAA when I made the mistake of reporting that I had had a single kidney stone, and the FAA made me not only prove that I didn't have any currently, which seemed reasonable, but also that I would never get them in the future. And after 5 months of being grounded with no answer, after I sent in the proof, I said, how long is this going to take? So in a conversation with another guy I knew, he said, yeah, I know a guy who's one of the top guys in the medical division of FAA, and 3 days later my pilot's license is restored. So I feel bad about pulling strings like this, but then again, I had just thought it would be a favor that I could ask of Ted, and furthermore, Natasha and I both, in fact, Natasha brought this up, we don't want to ask Ted to do something, even if he's able to, that's unseemly, that looks bad on him, or looks bad on anybody else. I don't want to get him. I don't want him to do something unseemly to do a favor. Now, obviously, the job of senators and representatives is to represent the interests of the people and all the rest of it. But this idea about having a face on legal immigration, that's a half an hour old, that idea, and I owe all of that to Ralph. So, Ralph, thank you very much for that. That is a compelling idea in terms of changing our immigration policy, or how we handle our immigration policy to the degree that we have one, because it's a fair statement. All we do is talk about the border, and all we do is talk about, well, what do we do about? Oh my God, this is really nutty. That's worse. Well, whatever. If it weren't for vanity, I don't think I would have survived. Hang on. Just beat it into some. It's not listening again. It just. Yeah, that's gonna do it. All right. Vanity, thy name is William. All right. But nobody's making the case for legal immigration, and somebody should be making the case for legal immigration. What we're going through with Diana is what a lot of people are going through, and my right angle that we posted a couple days ago is about that basically. It's keep out the honest people, keep them out. If you're doing things the legal way, if you're doing things the right way, the moral way, the way you're supposed to do things, you get declined. If you decide you want to just run over to the border or come up or walk a couple hundred miles, you not only don't get declined, you get accepted with open arms, and they throw benefits packages at you, and they score all these political points. It's like, yeah, somebody needs to be the face of legal immigration, and it never occurred to me until I got this incredible email from Ralph, who not only made the suggestion, but also listed a number of people who are on this issue and recommendations on how to reach them. So that was tremendous, Ralph, and thank you so much for that email. Got another one, just that I read anyway, just late in the day today, just before I got rolling. As I said, one of the reasons we started late was I was catching up on emails here. And I'm not going to go into too many details about this, because I just answered it as we record this. I sent the email 20 minutes ago, or 30. But I got an email from Jim, who during our 5-hour epic told a story about having a friend who, as we were talking about, I was talking about going into these dark places in order to desensitize myself to the sight of blood and gore, because when things get violent, I'm often, let me cut that "when things get violent" out. Just delete that. When there are emergency situations, I am usually the first person to respond to them, but I always do respond to them. And that's not because I'm just such a wonderful guy. It's because I just train myself to do that. I didn't actually read the book, but I read the essences of a book called The Bulletproof Mind. And that's what I want. I want a bulletproof mind. I want to be able to function in emergencies. And I've done a pretty good job of it, I think. So on the 5 hour extravaganza last week, I mentioned that one of the things that I did after getting physically sick in driver's ed, uh, at seeing these, these hamburger on the highway movies, that's what we called them, um, and then, having to walk out of a movie theater and smash into the back wall because I was so light and ed because of the sight of blood, I just went out there and just toughed it out and saw some horrible, horrible things. The reason I saw them is to desensitize myself to it so that if I find myself on a scene of an accident where there's a fair amount of red around, I'm not just incapacitated. That's the primary reason. But the actual philosophical reason is you don't appreciate what life in America is like unless you have seen a 16-year-old kid beaten to death and then lit on fire while still alive because he stole a bicycle. And I've seen that several times. When you see a 16-year-old kid burning alive because he stole a bicycle, you realize that this country is a bubble of Disneyland, and the rest of the world is not like that. And I think we have an obligation to know that. We have an obligation. We have a moral obligation and a practical obligation for American males of adult age. I don't want kids seeing this stuff. The best part about living in America is that kids don't have to see dead bodies everywhere. But I think at some point when you turn 18, you really need to. I think should be a rite of passage. It's like, okay, gentlemen, this is what the world is really like, and I'm not going to speak about Santa Claus, who I love dearly, because there might be younger people watching. But one of the things that kind of is in line with what I'm saying is there are times in your life when it's not only allowable or even appropriate, but just perfectly wonderful to be waiting up for Santa Claus. And then comes times later in your life when you realize you don't have really time to be waiting up for Santa Claus. And that if you don't wait up for Santa Claus when you're a kid, that's a shame. And if you keep waiting up for Santa Claus when you're 40, that's also a shame. So it is that's that. Anyway, that discussion prompted Jim, who's been here from the very beginning. Jim curated the Stratosphere Lounge shows and put time codes on every single one of the thousands of topics that I go through, and it's just been an amazingly, tremendously great guy. Had mentioned that he had been in Vietnam and had one of his friends had a head wound and died in his arms, and I said, aside from the fact I'm sorry and thank you, you don't come back from those experiences the same way, and you shouldn't. This is what's kind of new for me, We always, I don't want people coming back broken, but one of the things that you can say about veterans, combat veterans, because there's a difference, is that they come back different. And I think the short form of what they come back different is they come back having seen things that they have no ability to describe to most people because of this bubble of Disneyland that they built. I mean, we live in this kind of security and prosperity and comfort because of the veterans, because the people gave their lives or their limbs or their sanities or whatever to keep us here like this. And it's dangerous for grown adult American males to be that ignorant of what is really going on in the actual world out there. And also, it's not like this is a point I keep bringing up for myself, and I need to bring up every time I mention it to you fine people. Every time I think about the third world and their conditions, in terms of housing or their food problems or the cases of the violence and the burnings, women stoned to death, all of it. Every time I think about that, I keep thinking, what's wrong with those people? And then I have to grab myself by the back of the neck and the scruff of the neck, as I would say, and stop myself and say, there's nothing wrong with those people. That's how humanity is. That's how they're built. Since there have been humans, there have been 16-year-old thieves beaten to death, and that's what the human condition is. That's not what's different. We're what's different. And once you understand that, then your attitude towards many things change. And I just wanted to tell Jim I was very grateful that he told that story. I'm not going to reveal what he said to me in the email because he didn't say that I could. But I will say, just to suffice it to say, that it took a lot for Jim to make that admission, because that's not something you can generally talk to your average American about and understand it. We have a special group of people here, and everybody that heard that story was moved by that story, and I think, regardless of, strange thing to say, but regardless of what Jim thinks about it, I think that people need to hear those stories. They need to know. And this is one of the reasons why we live in the bubble. Our veterans are such decent people. They're such good people. Most cultures produce people who go out to war, professional warriors, slaughter thousands, come home and do nothing but brag about all the people they killed. Yeah, I've murdered 17 of them just with one stroke of the sword. They're proud of it. Our people come home and they never talk about it. They don't want to do it. They don't want to tell little kids not to wait up for Santa Claus. And so we have this incredible paradise, which is good, and I'm not saying we need to change that. I'm just saying comes a point when, as a rite of passage, which we also don't have any of, comes a point when we should, as a society, start saying, I think we need to show the men everything, and I think we need to show the women just enough so that they understand what the men are actually seeing, Just kind of give them the PG version of this X-rated world that we live in, just enough so they have some idea of what we have to deal with. And I just think that would actually be healthy, because we need to recalibrate our sensitivities in a world where the worst thing that happened to you today is, you got soy milk instead of almond milk in your Starbucks. That does not breed a healthy society, when, in point of fact, for most people, the real worst thing that happened today was that their friends died in their arms. And that's dangerous and evil to pretend that doesn't happen. And when I see, and to the credit of most or most viewers anyway, once again I'm coming back to those body cam videos, but virtually every single one of these drunken Gen Z female adult children will claim that they can't be handcuffed because they've got PTSD, or they can't get out of the car because they got PTSD, or they were drunk because they never admit they were drunk. I've never heard any of them admit they were wrong, or something happened, or you can't handcuff me because I have PTSD. They all have PTSD, and every single one of them has PTSD, and anxiety disorders. And these are the people I want to show these videos to. I was talking with Shelley about this earlier today. Our operations manager is wonderful. I said, I know this is not a fun topic, but honestly, I have a strong temptation to take the worst of what I've seen, edit it down to a 5-minute video, and show it to everybody. And then, or they can't breathe. Exactly right, Lady Hawk. They have PTSD and then they can't breathe. In fact, and they have to pee. Exactly right. So we definitely have people who've been there. In fact, so many young people, so many Gen Zers get arrested and they can't breathe. And it's such a horrible crime that they scream that they can't breathe at the top of their lungs for about 10 minutes. That's how badly they can't breathe. Just they scream at the top of their lungs that they can't breathe for 10 minutes. My experience with not being able to breathe was very different, but what do I know? I'm not a biologist. So anyway, I just wanted to thank Jim for not only sharing that story, but also for the very kind email, and would first of all wish him some peace on it. And I know everybody in the comment sections feel the same way. That's number one. Number two, as I mentioned in my email to him, it's not my place to decide what is comfortable for him. And I'm speaking to all vets out there now, not just Jim, obviously. It's not up for me to decide what's good for you. That's not my job. But I do have an opinion on this. And my opinion is, if you find the courage, the moral courage to talk about something that horrible in front of other people, I would imagine it's quite a relief. I would imagine it's a relief in the same way that lancing a boil is a relief. It's not fun, and it doesn't feel good. There's a bad sting when you actually have to do it. But overall, when you're finished, I would imagine that the pressure and that ache goes down quite a bit. So we'll see. All right, so there's that. Now, on to things like eclipses and other things of that nature. We'll call this Strata Lounge business. It's a new category here on the Stratosphere Lounge. 3 ideas that came up for me. Yes, by golly. One of them is not a Strata Lounge issue. It's just an idea that I think would be a good idea. So I was talking with Shelley about some of the things I just talked about and how, how unprepared for life we are. And modern generations, millennials and Gen Zs especially. And let me be clear, again, this is not a Gen Z issue. They didn't ask for this. They didn't design it. They're the victims of it. They're the ones who are victims of it. But I mentioned, there was, that a lot of times Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts would get you to the foothills of these issues. They wouldn't show you blood and gore, but they would teach you things like, here's how you set a broken bone, and here's how you deal with this, and what's the motto of the Boy Scouts of America? Is be prepared. And the whole scouting experience was part of that sort of gradual acceptance of a reality that, that you're not a kid anymore, and it's time to start doing some adult things. So I was telling Shelley that, and Shelley said, geez, so the Boy Scouts still exist? And I said, oh, the Boy Scouts of America? Yeah, of course they still exist. There's just a lot of girls in the Boy Scouts and a lot of homosexual, not a lot, but a number of confessed homosexual den masters or whatever it is for Boy Scouts. So the Boy Scouts were sued. This is quite a while ago now, because this is one of the founding milestones on our express lane to hell. But the Boy Scouts were sued. I'm speaking metaphorically. I don't remember the exact details, but if I remember correctly, essentially they were sued twice. They were sued to allow girls into the Boy Scouts, and then they were sued to have openly homosexual people become scout leaders. That's what I recall. And I think that so damaged the Boy Scouts of America that it is no longer on the radar. Not saying there aren't any. I live in Los Angeles. I don't live in America. And so I don't know how badly it's hurt the Boy Scouts. I know it's hurt it badly. And I haven't seen a Boy Scout in forever. Now, again, that's California and Los Angeles. I know they're out there. I know there are Eagle Scouts out there. I hear from them. However, I just had a thought when Shelley asked if they're still around. And I realized that the problem with the I don't know what the legal status of the Boy Scouts of America was or is. I don't know if they take any government subsidies or whatever. Oh my God, Darth Chuck the Merciless was an Eagle Scout. I got to stop for a second, because you hear things like, oh, Eagle Scout. You have no idea. You have no idea how hard it is to be an Eagle Scout. And one of my favorite things about my all-time hero, Chuck, is for the rest of his life, Neil Armstrong, who was also an Eagle Scout after the moon landing, he wrote a personal letter to every single Eagle Scout that ever became an Eagle Scout for the rest of his life. That's how important it is. So, oh my God, Lord Bios is an Eagle Scout too. Good Lord. You have no idea. It just seems like, oh, I got 4 badges, and if you're an Eagle Scout, you need to get, 64? So I'm a quarter of the way to Eagle Scout. No, you're not. You're not. You have no idea how much effort that takes and how much achievement that is. And so you got guys like Lord Bios here, and you've got guys like Chuck and all, and they're Eagle Scouts because they're disciplined, dedicated, they work hard, they think hard, they're patriotic, they love their country. And guys like that end up wanting to go to service academies and become fighter pilots or whatever the case may be. And nowadays, when they try to do that, they find out that members of the United States Air Force in uniform, full colonels or generals, are saying, we got to stop hiring white pilots. Well, I hang out at airports. I used to anyway. And if you start getting rid of white male pilots, you can have a lot less piloting. I mean, a lot less. So, where does this come from? Is this because the fabric of society is weakened so much? No, it's because a radical group of communists who are very loud and know how to tell a good story, have convinced enough people to vote for them so that they can, from the top down, through the President of the United States, order things like this kind of insanity, I almost said reverse prejudice, but there's no such thing as reverse prejudice. We live lives of reverse prejudice. Individualism is reverse prejudice. This is just plain prejudice. This is just plain racial prejudice. So, okay, yeah. Lady Hawk says, I don't care what the pilot looks like, I just want one who's competent. Exactly. How hard is this? It's simple. So anyway, this was an idea I had. I don't know what their status is, but, and I'm not talking about this so much in a serious way as I'm talking about it as just a way of thinking about some of our problems that we have. So if you want to make the case that the Boy Scouts of America is not what they used to be, and that they were successfully sued for, the things that I mentioned earlier, then I think somebody ought to come along and start a private company, private corporation called the American Boy Scouts, which of course is not the Boy Scouts of America. That's something completely different. I think what the American Boy Scouts should do is they should have green uniforms for their older scouts and blue uniforms for their younger kids, and we would call the older ones the Scout Boys, and the ones in the blue we would call them Scout Cubs. And I would do the whole thing again exactly the way it was as a private company and tell them to pound sand. That's what I would do. I would just say, okay, you sued your way. You sued your way into destroying this organization. You never wanted girls in the Boy Scouts. That's what the Girl Scouts are for. You wanted girls in the Boy Scouts because you had to wreck it because it excluded you on principle, because I'm not a biologist, but because it's for boys and not for girls. And since it was for boys and not for girls, and since girls were not allowed into it, these feminists had to sue it into existence. And once they'd sued all of the life and fun out of the Boy Scouts, then did girls join the Boy Scouts? No, of course not. Of course not. It just had to be destroyed. It had to be destroyed because it was teaching things like competence, patriotism, patience, duty, honor, loyalty, all of these things that matter. So if they've sued it into, if not into oblivion, then into mediocrity, then I think somebody ought to come along and start this American Boy Scouts private company. So that if somebody says, well, we demand that we have girls in there, and that we have openly homosexual scout leaders, and we can say, no, sorry, it's private property. We're doing what we want. And since it's private property, you can go straight directly to hell, which is where you're trying to take the rest of us, and we've just decided to get tired of it. So that was just an idea I had about the American Boy Scouts. So that's that. Two things for the Stratosphere Loungers. The obvious one is the well-known Bill Whittle eclipse of 2024, which is rapidly approaching. Good news and bad news on this. Good news is, and the bad news is bad, and reminds me to tell you one more little piece of bad news, horrible news, which I might be a little bit facetious about. As soon as I finish with the eclipse story, somebody remind me to tell the other piece of horrible bad news we got. All right, so the good news is Phil and his lovely wife Bobby, who are dearest people to me, are on their way to the eclipse line, and are going to be in Texas. Let me just see. I mean, they gave me like a street address. We're not going to give that out. But it looks like the Strateclipse is going to happen in Texas, which is not a surprise. Give me 1 second here. So I want to see if I can find a place that is close to where we're going, but not give it the name away because the town is so small that, Hang on 1 second. So I just need to find the town, and then I'll see what's close to. Hang on. We'll reveal it later. I just don't want to give it exactly. We will definitely reveal it. What's the point of having a group meeting if we can't tell people where we're meeting? But just for right now, I don't want to give away, because this is a tiny, 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 tiny little town of people. Yeah, population of like 900 or something. So what's near it? Okay. Well, it's in the general vicinity of Athens, Texas. That's the first name that shows up, which is southeast of Fort Worth. And the distance appears to be about, I don't know, 20, 30 miles southeast of Fort Worth. We will, yeah, exactly. Mark Ument says, just so the millions of Bill Whittle fans, it's like you never announce a Taylor Swift concert. It's going to be, Taylor Swift's going to be having a free concert. You know, I mean, my God, you'll destroy the U.S. transit system. Same thing for me. If it gets, word gets out to the general population that we're going to be having Bill present at an Eclipse event, then God knows, what will happen to the disruption of the local economy. But in any event, here's what's going to happen. It looks like what's going to happen. The good news is we're going to the Eclipse. Natasha had, as I've mentioned many times, had learned to drive not too long ago, many months ago now, bought her own car with her own money, and she loves that car, and I love this car too. So Natasha loves to drive, and I have been telling her long before she learned how to drive, I've been telling her since I've known her, honey, one day we got to make a cross-country trip. We got to drive from Los Angeles to Florida. And then along comes the Eclipse. I said, well, maybe we could do half of that. I said, you want to drive out to this thing in Texas? No, Billy, no. No, it'd be terrible. It'd be much too tired. Then I started reminding her of all of these things that she wanted to do. She says she has hungry eyes. She does. When we drive anywhere, anytime we see anything new, she's just like on it, like a predator almost, just soaking up all this landscape and beauty. And I want her to see this country that she's become a citizen of, and you can't see that from the air. I mean, you can, but you don't get the same resolution. And I started talking about it. I said, honey, you always wanted to go to Sedona. We could hit Sedona on the way back. We could, instead of taking the 10 out to Phoenix directly, we could go down and take Interstate 8, which goes through that part of the Arizona that looks like where the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote live. And then we could go to Texas. And then on the way back, I said, and on the way back, I could take you to the one place I want to take you more than anything else ever in this country. My favorite, I have to admit, Sequoia probably surpasses it. But at the time, it was my favorite and is one of my two favorite places, and that's Carlsbad Caverns. So we could make a trip out of it. And all of a sudden, she's on fire for the idea. So hooray. So the general plan is the eclipse is on the 8th. Natasha's birthday's on the 6th. Mine's on the 7th. So we'd leave on the 6th, drive in that general vicinity, stay the night somewhere far from the eclipse line, night of the 6th. On the 7th, drive more towards the eclipse area, get to where we're going to be on our final viewing spot on the night of the 7th, maybe get together someplace and have some, celebrations of some kind. And then on the 8th at around 1:30 or something local time is the actual eclipse. So the good news is, if you can get there, if you can fly into Dallas or Fort Worth or whatever, if you really want to come and see, you need to see the eclipse. If you're not planning on seeing a total solar eclipse, you need to do it. You need to drop everything you've got and do it. You think it's going to be spectacular. It is indescribable. You cannot describe the event. It is the most amazing thing I've ever seen or ever will see. If you have any chance at all to get anywhere on that eclipse line and see, anything less than 100% total eclipse is a waste of time. 99% occlusion is not good enough. That's how much light comes out of the sun. But I cannot stress it enough. So that's the good news. Now here's the news that knocked the wind out of me. We went to the 2017 eclipse, went up to Idaho, and was great. People who are much smarter than me, which is a significant percentage of the population, I might add, have been doing a daily analysis of what the weather situation is going to be there. And at this location, at this moment, at this location, in the general vicinity of Athens, Texas, they estimate that the chance of a clear sky is about 50%. That's not good odds. So needless to say, when I heard that there was a chance of the eclipse being, overcast, I started complaining to Phil, and I expect Phil to do something about it. But he said, it's spring, man. And so we don't really have much control over that. So here's how I'm going to cope with the weather stress, because the idea, it's not about the drive. It could be outdoors. I don't care. if there's going to be a total solar eclipse and I step outside to watch it and it's a heavy overcast cloud cover and I miss it because of that, I'm going to be really quite disappointed. Even if there's a big white puffy cumulus cloud that's right in the middle of it, and it only takes 4 minutes for that cumulus cloud to pass, but it takes 3 minutes for the eclipse to happen, I'm not going to be pleased about that either. So what I think the general plan is going to be is we're going to, starting on the 5th or 6th, we're going to look at the general weather trends. And then as we get closer and closer to the event, we're going to have a better picture of what the major weather patterns are going to be. If it looks like there's a front or anything moving along the eclipse line, then my vote is we move to where there's no front. We just drive along that line of the eclipse, north or south. There's not a whole lot further south you can go, but north or south until we find an area that at least appears to be clear of like solid overcast visible from satellites. And then we get ourselves saddled up someplace. I'm thinking the middle of a, kind of a small little highway, 2-lane highway would be a good place to do it. But we stay saddled up because that way, if it turns out that it looks like we're going to get a single cumulus cloud come in and spoil our day, we can, 2 minutes before totality, just keep the car running, put on the sirens and, move a quarter of a mile up the road or whatever to get out of the way of an individual cloud. That's how desperate I am to see this thing. And I'm not going to go to all that trouble and not see it, although I have no control over that, believe it or not. So that's the eclipse thing. So it's going to be in the general vicinity of Athens, Texas. That's not Athens, Georgia, which is further away, and it's not Athens, Greece, which is even further than Athens, Georgia. So yes, it is an officially sanctioned Stratosphere Lounge eclipse event. It's the Strateclipse, and at the very least, and maybe this will be the very best consolation if we do get, socked in, then at the very least we'll have a chance to hang out with each other and have some beers and hamburgers and hot dogs or whatever else you Americans eat. How we'll meet up, I haven't figured it out yet, Jay, but we will figure it out. We will, as we get closer, we'll put a pin in where we're going to be and do a little more research. So basically, I'll increase the resolution of this meetup later, but right now, plan on southeast of Fort Worth, Texas, about 20 miles or so. Hey, here's a super chat from Lapco92. Evening, Bill. Cagney 123 reminder. My good man, this had better be the best movie ever made because the levels of anticipation now go through the ceiling. My favorite scenes are him asking his German aide what he did during the war and get a guy getting set up at a border checkpoint. You'll love it. Sold. Thank you. And thank you for the super chat. Have some pork chop and pulled pork. Oh, the pork chop's my favorite. Pork chops and applesauce. My God. In fact, I'm getting hungry. That's a fact. And, we're not getting a 5-hour show tonight, but we will do a couple questions even if we have to go through the motions. So that's it. One last item on the agenda here for officially sanctioned Strat events. And this one, and all future Strat events, I can't say all future, but at least for the foreseeable future, Strat events are not going to be in the hands of other people who are not Stratosphere Lounge people because we had a bad experience with that. And that is this. The script is nearly finished. I know it's been nearly finished for 7 months now, and this is the living definition of build time, but it's nearly finished. When the Frank Luke script is finished is when I can begin things to come, story mechanics, and get back to Major Mace Mattingly and so on. Once these things are up and spinning, the first episodes of these things are up and spinning, I had an idea for a fundraiser and a membership drive, and it only occurred to me again when I was talking with Shelley. We did 5 hours last time. So here's what I'm proposing. When we've got new product to show, here's the first episodes of our 3 new series. When those are there, I think I am in the mood to do a 24-hour stratathon. That's what I'm going to do. 24-hour stratathon. We did 5. I can do 24 hours. We'll just start at 6 p.m. on Thursday, as usual, and we'll go to 6 p.m. on Thursday, 6 p.m. on Friday. I'll do 24 hours, and I will only leave for bathroom breaks. I'll eat here at the table, and we might just say that entire thing. We'll get whatever questions are in the Stratosphere Lounge members only thing stuff. We'll get some Facebook members, but actually we'll do most of it will be just interaction from the comment stream. And if you're not a member at BillWhittle.com, maybe after 19 or 20 hours you may decide it's worth your $9.95. But if not, no worries. Now, now Road Rider says easier said than done. That's true. It is easier said than done. But it can be done. I find myself being awake for 24 hours, no less than 10 times a year. Probably more like once a month. I go at least 24 hours in a row. So yeah, so I'll just come on in. I'll get plenty of sleep before I come in. We'll come on in, we'll fire it up, and we'll do 24 hours of hot air bloviation, the likes of which no one has ever seen before. And I just think it'd be a lot of fun. And I don't know how many members it'll get or how much money it'll raise. I'll try and promote it, which is a novel idea. But at the very least, I think it'd be a lot of fun for the regulars who are watching live and who always end up watching the recorded versions of this show. So I'm not going to do it until I have product, because I'm going to keep running that product during the telethon the way that Jerry does, you know, bathroom breaks and stuff. Okay, now let's take a look at what's coming up with Major Mace Man. Off I go, you know. Run out to the street, down to the overpass, pick up another, you know, dime bag of meth or whatever, and we're good to go. All right. I don't even know such thing as a dime bag of meth. It just sounded like I knew what I was talking about, which is the case for most everything I say. Okay, so here we go. Questions, that's right. Am I going to sing Never Walk Alone at the end of the marathon? No. Mike, I'm not Mark. I'm sorry, I'm not Mark. I'll tell you what I will do. I will sing Hot Rod Lincoln at the end of the marathon. That I'll do. That's a promise. You can hold me to that. Maybe at the beginning and the end of the 24-hour Stratathon, I will sing Hot Rod Lincoln at the beginning and Hot Rod Lincoln at the end, and we can see what 24 hours of talking does to an elderly man's vocal cords. I am. What is today? I'm what? 6-7 weeks away from retirement age. I ain't retiring, I'm just getting started. But yeah, in 7 weeks, I'll be 65 freaking years old. I'll be a senior citizen. And man, am I going to milk that for everything it's worth. I'm going to get every single discount available, you know? Every single discount. Oh, before we go to questions, this won't take long, because it's about airplanes. You know me. Usually get those over in no time. This is the most horrible news that I've received in the last, I don't know, not counting the immigration thing, which was a genuine hit. This is the worst news I've heard in probably 5 years. So I talked about doing this DCS squadron once we get this script out the door and everything spinning up and everything running and stuff. And I showed pictures. I'll get one picture because none of this will make any sense until I do. This won't take just but a second. Hang on a second, please. Because when we do this, and we'll if you have a joystick, rudder pedals, a throttle, and a head tracking device, we'll train you up from nothing. And that's how we'll end up with a really great squadron. We'll start everybody, will come in from nothing if they have to, and that's how we'll do it. Hang on, I gotta find a good picture here. Yeah, that'll work. So, real excited about this DCS thing, and then I heard this news, which just gobsmacked me. Here's a picture. YouTube's gonna get it first. I should know by now that the way to do this is to just not just drag it in there, because that doesn't seem to work. Hang on a second. All right, here we go. Hang on a second here, YouTube. Here comes your version of it. Everybody hold your horses. Yes. Image. And you guys over on Twitch, just talk amongst yourselves here. I'll get this in a second. Add a new source. Add source. Image 1. Yes. Browse. Yes. Desktop. Yes. Yes. Jace. That was Gene Levy and the Ricardo Montalban School of Acting from Second City TV, which is so much better than Saturday Night Live that it just cannot be mentioned in the same sentence. It's a travesty. That show was so bloody brilliant. Come on, Bill, you can do it. There it is. Okay, so here's the picture I'm looking for. Hang on, it's coming into YouTube. Okay, done. Just stretch this out. Again, we're talking about DCS Squadron for anybody who's interested in Stratosphere Lounge. If you know how to fly a flight sim, great. If you don't know how to fly a flight sim and you're ready to get the basic tools, we'll teach you how to fly from the beginning. But I had so much fun teaching Phil formation flying, because that's a tough order, trying to get things through that, head of his. But I had so much fun doing it. I'm going to buy a computer just for GPS's Hilo Aviator. Retired helicopter pilot, but we'll try and keep up. Hilo Aviator, not only will you try and keep up, I'll tell you what we'll do. We will also there are a number of helicopters in DCS, and we can put you on the these search and rescue things when we go out on big missions. We'll hook you up with we'll hook you up with whatever you want to. The Apache simulator is particularly excellent, but we can hook you up with a Black Hawk, or if you prefer the Huey, as they famously said about the Black Hawk, the last Black Hawk will be flown to the boneyard, slung underneath the Huey. But in any event, yeah. So we'll all do all this. So it's going to be fun. So anyway, here's a F-18 Hornet in YouTube. Stand by while we get this technical miracle into Twitch here. All right, Twitch has been a little better. Maybe I could just drag this in. Let's see. Yes. Okay. All right. So here's the worst news I've heard in 5 years. So this is the F-18 Hornet, Super Hornet, Block 3. It's the latest Navy fighter. In DCS, the Hornet is a legacy Hornet. It's the F-18 regular Hornet, F-18C. And somewhere, certainly by the early 2000s, those aircraft have been replaced by the Super Hornet, which is significantly bigger and different. As a matter of fact, I've heard it said that the way Boeing managed to pull this off was they convinced the Navy that they were buying an upgraded Hornet, when in point of fact, they made a brand new fighter that looked enough like the Hornet so they could pull that off. But in any event, this is the F-18 Super Hornet Block 3. And here's the worst news I ever had in the last 5 years. So I was going to get a guy to make the F-18 Super Hornet model. There's a really good Super Hornet DCS module out there. There's a mod called a Superbug by a group called Chiller Juice Studios. And on the inside, they've just done a rough job of the canopy, of the cockpit. It's basically the stock F-18 cockpit. But the thing you're looking at here, this beast has a cockpit that consists of just one giant widescreen that's actually relatively easy to simulate. Plus, I want the back seater to be working. So I had the idea. There's enough DCS guys that want this. I'm going to go to these guys. I already made a letter to them and said, hey, look, we love your mod so much. How much would it cost to get the front cockpit to look more or less like a Block 3 Super Hornet, and then a rear cockpit just duplicated? That's fine with me. It doesn't have to be completely accurate. It's close enough. So here's the horrible news. The thing that makes this F-18F so bitchin' and so spectacularly cool looking is the addition of the conformal fuel tanks. Those would be those those bulges that are on the top of the wing that start kind of halfway down the canopy. If you look at the rear canopy, the bow between the front canopy and the rear canopy, right behind them you can see those kind of triangular shaped things that they put on the top of the wing of the Super Hornet. And I thought the Hornet was pretty tough looking, the Super Hornet, but from looking straight down, the Hornet has a kind of almost like a rounded appearance, and these conformal fuel tanks I thought made this thing look like the toughest, coolest airplane in the sky. The freaking conformal fuel tanks are fantastic. Fantastic. And here, my friends, is where the weeping begins. Because the Navy, that'd be our Navy, will not be accepting any Super Hornets with conformal fuel tanks. I'll give all of you a moment to process that. The thing that looked the coolest on that airplane is not going to be on the airplane. Do you know why? Oh man, look at that. That's incredible. It's not that I can't read. It's just the hard. Is it? It's 5708 Rivers. I'm sorry, it's a light green. It's hard for me to read. He says he refueled many F-18s. Here's the problem. Here's the problem with the conformal fuel tanks. They have conformal fuel tanks on the F-15. When they made the Strike Eagle, they put them on the side. It looks great. It's cool. They put them on the F-16, which don't look good, but they add a lot of... The F-16 used to be a rapier. Now it's kind of a bludgeon, but it's a lot more capable than the original F-18. So what was it about the conformal fuel tanks that worked so well that didn't work on the Navy? And the Navy said, well, part of it is that they're hard to maintain with the salt air and the corrosion. I said, you can fix that problem. Just get some Vaseline. You can't sacrifice something that looks that badass for such a simple reason. And it turns out the reason that the Navy's not going to be getting not going to be getting the super bitchin' cool conformal fuel tanks is actually a pretty decent reason, and that is that they fall off the airplane. The shock of a catapult launch and the shot of a catapult trap, a trap, with the arresting hooks and wires, is shaking those things loose. And I'm thinking, you're getting an extra 500 miles of range out of these things, or gallons, I can't remember which, but extra range. And that's important when you're going to strike Japanese. I beg your pardon, Lord, forgive me for that. Maybe the worst misspoken thing I've done on this show in the history of the world. That's very useful when you're going after Chinese targets. You don't want your tankers out there within range of Chinese missiles, so having the jet have some extra fuel is great. Steve Whoop said E3 could be a tanker. The F-18s do buddy tank each other, but you can't do a refueling mission while you're coming in on a strike mission because it's just not something you want to do at 20 feet above the deck. And so I thought, well, damn, man, you're getting extra range. Why don't you just put some extra screws in the thing, Why don't you just bolt it down a little tighter? They said no. And I have to say that while it, obviously it's not the worst news I've had in the last 5 years, but it genuinely hurt. It really genuinely hurt. So they're going to go without them. Now, Boeing says that they will still make the conformal fuel tanks available for other international customers, like Canada, for example. The F-18 is Canada's fighter jet. They just don't land them on aircraft carriers. But not landing on aircraft carriers, what's the reason why you would have a bitchin' jet if you're not going to land it on an aircraft carrier? Yeah. It just sucks. I thought about, could I justify putting the conformal fuel tanks on this fictional F-18 squadron? I said, no, I can't. The F-18 Block 3s are going out to the fleet. We can get the Superbug mod put up by Chiller Juice Studio that makes the stock F-18 look like a Super Hornet on the outside is great. And it looks fantastic on the outside, but not only does it not look any different on the inside, the worst part about the mod is it has the old radar, it has the old missiles, it has the old missile stations. It's just putting a skin on it. So I have to check the DCS forums to see if he's answered, but I sent a message to the guy saying, look, we love actually what I said was, I love your Superbug mod, I live in it. And I said, I know there's a lot of people out there who want this, and would you be willing to at least discuss how much it would cost to take that mod of yours a little further? Because every time people say, this doesn't work, well, how come I didn't get this? You very rightfully say, because I did it in my spare time, man, out of love. I just did it because I love it. And I have a job to do. And I thought, okay, well, what would it cost? I mean, to work on it full time, how much would it cost? Because I could be willing to bet you that the number would be probably six-figure number. I reckon relatively low six-figure number, maybe less than that even. And I'm just thinking, well then, damn man, tell us what it would cost to get it there, and we'll crowdfund it. I'll run the crowdfunding thing, and we'll crowdfund this thing and raise the money in 20 minutes. I wonder. I wonder if they. You know what? One of the problems, obviously, is that a conformal fuel tank. Now, I hope you're sitting down for this because this is going to be some shocking news. But I suspect that one of the reasons the stress is on the conformal fuel tank is because the conformal fuel tank is full of conformal fuel. So you've got a significant amount of weight there that's not built directly into the airframe. It's sitting on top of the wing, and when you take that jet from 0 to 130 knots in 2 seconds, I imagine the weight of that fuel is causing a significant amount of well, you got to move that mass, and that mass doesn't want to move. And so the jet is built to take that kind of acceleration, and when you finally shoot the jet, the conformal fuel tanks are going to want to stay where they are, like everything else, but they're not really attached to the framework. All of this to say, Navy, could we get the conformal fuel tanks even if there's no fuel on them? Could we get them then? Just for looks? I understand they had drag and everything, but that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in putting the fear of God into the eyes of Chinese fighter pilots, and the conformal fuel tanks really do an awful lot of that. Could we just put like dummy tanks on there? Could make them out of, like, foam and cover them in fiberglass or something like that. Smooth them down like the way you build a Long Easy. Could we just kind of put them on there just to look kind of badass? Yes, and then actually, as I was joking about this idiotic idea that I had, that was really a stupid, idiotic idea, I realized what Darth Chuck the Merciless just said. Wait a minute. John Pershing says, would you also like missiles without motors? John, that's a ridiculous thing to ask me. The answer to that question, obviously, is how cool do they look? I mean, if they look really, really badass cool, then I say yes, absolutely. But then it just occurred to me, I'm serious about this now. The weight of the empty tank is not significant, right? It's not significant. So why don't you do this? I cannot believe I didn't think of this earlier. Just about every mission that a fighter jet goes on these days is going to be refueled at least once on the way in and once on the way out. And usually it's refueled 2, 3, 4 times on a particular mission. So if you're saying that the conformal fuel tanks, Hilo Aviator for a super chat, thank you, buddy. So if you're saying that the conformal fuel tanks can't take the loads of the launch and the trap, then launch the jet without any fuel in the conformal fuel tanks. You don't have to carry so many of these gigantic fuel bags underneath, and those things blow your radar cross-section to hell. Take off with them empty, get up to the tanker, hit the tanker, fill up the main tanks plus the conformal fuel tanks, go do your mission, hurt the bad guys, come back, burn the fuel out of the conformal tanks first, and then land. What's the difference? What's the big deal? What's the problem? Why are you depriving me of my conformal fuel tanks? Why is the government depriving me of my stepdaughter and my conformal fuel tanks in the same week? I find that cruel and unfair. Why not? And if on some unspeakable emergency or something, you got, oh my God, we've got conformal fuel tanks and they've got conformal fuel in them and we got to land, well then, by the way, this doesn't affect landing on runways. Land it empty. If it turns out that you're just so full of fuel, then just dump the fuel. If you've got so much fuel that your conformal fuel tanks are still full, then dump enough fuel. What's the big deal? Jeez. I can't believe how easy it was to solve that problem. And that's telling me the Navy's lying about something. I bet you it's got something to do with DEI. I guarantee you that's why they took the conformal fuel tanks off of that shit. I'm very tempted to have them build the mod with the conformal fuel tanks on, because I think that's a perfectly good... Beef Fire gets it in one. He gets it in one. I spent 20 minutes crying about this when I should have just said what he just said. What is a man without his conformal fuel tanks? I ask you. C.K. Chesterton talked about this a lot. What is a man without his conformal fuel tanks? What is he? He's a shadow. He's a shadow of a man. He's a man without chest. He's a homunculus. He's a walking simulacron of a human. He's not a man at all. He's certainly not a steely-eyed missile man. He's not even a missile man. He's a fraud. He's an imposter. A man without his conformal fuel tanks is not a man. It's just an ape that looks like a man. You put an ape in a flight suit, that's fine. It's not a pilot. Pilots have conformal fuel tanks. Damn it. Hold on now. I've got it. I've got it. I've got it. and so ends with one brilliant flash of insight on the part of America's greatest living genius. Comes the end of China as a threat to the United States of America, because I've figured out what you can do with the conformal fuel tanks. Are you ready? You take the conformal fuel tanks, you put them on the jet, make them look super badass. I'll bring the picture back just so everybody can see just how exactly badass they look. So you take those conformal fuel tanks, you tell the Navy that said no tanks for us, you tell them to pound sand. We're going to put the conformal fuel tanks on because, here it comes for our YouTube friends, because what we're going to do with those super cool bitchin' tanks on top of the wings is we're not going to fill them with fuel. We're going to fill them with corbomite. And thus ends the Chinese threat to American military hegemony for the next century. We're going to fill the fuel tanks with corbomite. And once that is widely known, then our problems with the Chinese, or anybody else for that matter, is over. We're just going to fill them full of corbomite. That's why they're there. That's why they're there. Why do you have these strange, super cool looking things on the top of your wings, you crazy Americans? And then we just leak it out. We just make it look like it's a fake leak. I say, well, because that's where we put the corbomite. Where else are we going to put the corbomite? And then the Chinese, being the sly Oriental devils that they are, will say, what's corbomite? And we'll say, what's corbomite? Oh, my God. We are so far ahead of you guys. We're going to fill the corbomite. Here's what happens, Mr. Chinese fighter pilots. And I hope you're listening too, G. Corbomite is a material that, when exposed to enemy fire, explodes with the kind of power that takes out anything within a 300-mile radius. So, if in the unlikely event that one of our jets loses air-to-air combat, then the corbomite is going to detonate, and the corbomite is going to take anything that you've got within 300 miles of that thing out of the air. In fact, the reason that these tanks are shaped so strangely is because we've managed to make a shaped charge corbomite, so that when the corbomite explodes, it all goes in one direction, goes forward. So what we're saying is, if you decide to come up and meet us, man to man in the air, and I'm using that term loosely, and by some miracle you manage to defeat one of our jets in combat, then when the jet gets hit with your missiles, the corbomite shaped charge is going to explode. That's going to blow forward, and it's going to take everything within 300 miles of the airspace above us, and it's going to turn it into pink mist. So probably you should just stay at port. I wouldn't mess with us if I were you. Jay Coulter wins the internet for the night, ladies and gentlemen. Hardest hit, Clint Howard. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then just Google corbomite. But I will tell you, the corbomite was invented by the greatest American, almost living American, greatest American yet to live, this guy. That's who developed corbomite. And I think a little corbomite goes a long way. That's the beauty of corbomite, is a little corbomite goes a long way. All right, now we'll get to some serious questions. Look at that. Look at it. See, this is perfect. He's looking at me, and he's like, God, this guy is so freaking brilliant. I ought to make him the next captain of the Starship Enterprise. Played by a Canadian, I know. Eric says they could be actual nukes. Seriously now, joking this whole thing, but in 100% complete seriousness, if the tanks can't take the stress of the fuel, then why not put them on the drag is minimal. You have to refuel anyway, It keeps your radar cross-section down relative to these enormous external tanks. I don't understand it. Since I don't understand it, that's a good reason for me to include it as, yeah, we're the only squadron in the entire U.S. Navy that has conformal fuel tanks. You know why? Because we're the only ones that figure out that they don't have to go those stresses if they're not full of fuel when we land or take off. Call us super geniuses. All right. It's come as a shock to most of you. I'm not going to do an awful lot of questions tonight because I'm a little bit over excited. I think I had too much sugar or something. But we'll do some just for the to live up to our company motto, which is you probably, if you don't know that, you don't know this if you're not watching the Right Angle Backstage show made available to our members. But the motto, the official company motto for BillWhittle.com is always produce the minimum viable product. That's our mantra. MVP, minimum viable product. So if I say that the Stratosphere Lounge is a show where we take questions, as long as I take a question, I am providing the minimal viable product. And if you don't like it, you can go become a member with somebody else. Wait a minute. Scratch what I just said. Forget that I even mentioned that. That was a very bad idea. I was just kidding. There are no other membership-based things out there. It was just a joke. Usury? What's that? Is that a new word? Corbomite, yes. Some people have noticed my chippy mood. If it turns out the chippiness holds for another 2 weeks, I may be tempted to reveal why I'm so... I said chipper. I meant to say chipper. If I'm chipper 2 weeks from now and chipper next week, there may be a reason for being this chipper. It's a great word, underused word. Thank you again for Eric Blake for curating these things here. You got Ian Nolan, you got an Eric. I'm starting to sound like Joe Biden. You got Ian Nolan, you got Eric Blake, Eli Noor, Bob Bife, Christopher Stanley, Jacob Belchak, Jim Samples. Oh my gosh. All right, I feel so bad about this. I almost feel like we should have to do an extra show or something. Which I can't do. Damn it. All right, I feel guilty about this. If I will, at the very, very, very least, I'll handle them during the Stratathon. But I'm going to have to miss a lot of these questions tonight. And please ask them next week. And please, if you do copy and paste them, please put second attempt, because I take those seriously and I feel bad about it. Okay, I'm just trying to see. Just trying to see, what I can do here. All right. All right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through these things, and my criteria is going to be. I was going to say I was going to prioritize people that don't often appear in the questions. But what I really mean by that is I'm just going to not answer questions from people who are there all the time. So Eric is the first person to suffer, and I apologize to all of you for this. But I'm not going to be able to get through anything like all of them, and I want to do as little damage as possible. And I interact with a lot of people on the chat thing. And Eli, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to skip that one too, because I just have to. If you please ask it again, I promise I'll get to you next time. It's relatively focused, and so I'm going to have to bail on that one. So let's do Bob Knife or Neef. I hope I get that right. Knief. I hope it's Bob Knife. Neef. Bob Neef, if I had to guess. Sorry, Bob. Lapco92 for Super Chat says, do you know there's a documentary coming out on March 22nd, which is Shatner's 93rd birthday, called William Shatner, You Can Call Me Bill? I did not know that. I'd like to see him. I'd like to see what he looks like at 93. I've been introducing Natasha to the Twilight Zone. And last night we watched the episode where they've got the little fortune teller thing, in the tiny little cafe in this small town. It's about superstition. Shatner's probably about 5 years before he gets the role as Captain Kirk, and that is a good-looking guy, man. He's just a really handsome dude, and when he's really young like that, he's not. See, the thing I like about him, it's man crush time. But the thing about looking at young William Shatner, like young pre-Star Trek William Shatner, is he's a really good-looking guy, but he's not a pretty guy, and that's what I'd like to get back to. It's just men that look like men, not in a gay way or anything. You know what I'm saying? All right, so here we go. Okay, Bob. This is why I'm taking this one. Cracks me up. Last week, my question was the third question on the list, but it didn't make it on the 5-hour Stratosphere Lounge extravaganza. Guaranteed read this time. I've listened to your Stratosphere Lounge episode from right after your speaking event in December 5 times. My question is that I guess that'd be the things to come thing. My question is, and I almost figured out the answer, but let me ask you directly: why exactly does the left want to tear it all down? This is an excellent question. It seems to be true, but it's unconvincing when I tell people those darn lefties just want to tear it all down. Many think that the left is misguided, but they don't think that leftists really want to tear it down. Is it just spoiled brats looking for something to burn because their life is so darn good? Thanks for all you do for freedom and liberty. Actually, thank you. It's actually they may make a good right angle. What's the difference between freedom and liberty? Leftists seem to hate the word liberty. Yeah, they do. Well, just on that last point, there's I just want to do like legacy firewalls, and one of them is how freedom and equality are diametrically opposed. That's a slider. You don't get to have 100% equality, 100% freedom. You got to decide where you're going to put it, because complete freedom means no equality, and complete equality means no freedom. Anyway, to your question here, why does the left want to tear it all down? And more importantly, is that a fair thing to say? The answer is yes and no. Next question. No, and the reason the answer is yes and no, Bob, is because most of the people that vote for these policies don't want to tear things down. But they do vote for people who want to tear things down. So the people that actually want to tear things down have created a world where your choice is to vote for the kind, nice Democrats who do all these nutty things, or those horrible, evil Republicans who are racist bastards who want to make everybody convert to Christianity or else be executed. And so when I say that the answer is yes and no, there are tens of millions of people who vote Democrat who don't want to tear things down. Their choice is that or Orange Man, and they go with the Democratic Party. But the people who are making the decisions and promoting the policies, the policymakers, whoever the real president of the United States actually is, all of these university professors, the whole thing, all of the people that know what they're doing and they know what they want. Yes, they don't want to build another society. They want to burn this one down. They know that the society that they want to build doesn't work, and they just want to burn it down. It's an act of nihilism. And it's Gumman says uneducated voters. The voters are the victims here as well. But the people who are in charge of this are nihilists. They seek their own destruction. They don't want to live. Yeah, they want to rule over the ruins, and they want to take everybody with them. That's kind of what a nihilist does. It's like, I don't want to compete. I can't compete. I don't want to work as hard as conservatives. I don't want to make as much money. I don't want to do anything, but I don't want them to have it either. So since I'm not willing to put in the time and effort to live the kind of life that they seem to, I'd rather just burn everything down and take them with us. That's the way they look at things. I'm sorry to say, but it's true. It seems inconceivable that somebody's policies would be burn it all down. Maybe it helps to say that the majority of the ones that want to burn it all down want to burn it all down so they can replace it with their socialist paradise. And what that makes them is not political. It makes them not politicians. It makes them religious zealots. It makes them priests. They don't they don't there's no question they're trying to burn down America. Some of them just want to burn down everything and just go with it. But most of them want to burn down America because they're convinced that their vision of what's coming is going to be so much better. And when I say so much better, this needs to be said all the time. Whenever you hear these clowns talking about a better world that they want to build, what they really mean is a world that's better for them. That's one of the great rhetorical mistakes that we constantly make. If we just understood how the language works, and if we understood that they specialize in how the language works, if we stopped talking about abortion as women saying, it's my body, my choice, it is your choice, it's not your body. If we stopped walking into these killing fields, if we stopped talking about our democracy and talking about our republic, we'd be winning all across the board. And this is one of those cases. It's one of those cases. When people say, we want to build a better future, the answer that the heckler in the back of the room says, you mean a better future for you? Because that's what they want. The people that want a communist society, the true believers who want a communist society, fall into two categories. They're either lunatics like Lenin, who want a communist society because he has to be in control of things. He has to tell people what to do. He's the most mean-spirited creature in history. He's a reptile. Lenin inverted communism. He inverted Marxist theory. He's a religious zealot of Marxist theory, which says that the communist revolution is going to occur as a result of the proletariat. The proletariat, being factory workers, will rise up against their capitalist oppressors, take over the means of production, and then just go to work in the factories to make stuff for everybody for free. That's Marxism. That's classical Marxism. And so Marxism is going to come to the industrialized countries. Well, it didn't come to the industrialized countries. It came to Russia. And the problem with Russia is that the number of people, when Lenin is on his sealed train, this is all in my Empire of Terror thing, which is, they've told me is going to be mid-March release. Episode 2, it's called Bacillus. And Lenin is on a sealed train going through Germany, protected by Germany, who's at war with Russia, who get him into Russia because they convinced that he can bring Russia down and take it out of the war. This is exactly what happened. So Lenin is on this train for 8 or 9 days or 10 days or whatever, and now Lenin has to write something called his April Theses, which are studied by Soviet children for the next 80 years of misery. And basically what Lenin does with the April Theses is he takes Marxism and inverts it. He's going to a country that has maybe 2 or 3% of the total population are proletarians. It is not an industrialized, it's the least industrialized society in Europe. He needs factory workers and proletarians for Marxism to work. Now he's got a chance to bring revolution to Russia, and 96% of the population are peasants and 3% are proletarians. You need proletarians for Marxism. What the hell's he going to do? He's not going there to bring Marxism. Well, let me rephrase that. He's not going there as an advocate of Marxism. He's going there and he's going to invert Marxism in order to get Marxism. So his attitude is, I have to think of a way to convince people that that I'm doing this in the name of Marxism, and then over the course of time we'll kill most of the peasants and take the rest of them and put them in the cities. They'll be proletarians, and then we'll have achieved what we should have achieved in the beginning. It's just power. If he really genuinely believed in Marxism more than he believed in his own desire for power, he would have stayed in Germany or England and agitated there, because those are countries that, according to Marx, are prepared for communism. But he didn't. He got a chance to rule Russia, so he went back to Russia and inverted communism because it suited him and it suited his will to power. And after they failed so spectacularly, and the country was in utter ruins and they're utterly starving, everybody's starving, the Americans, those horrible, bloodthirsty, blood-sucking, mean-spirited capitalist bastards in the West, start sending hundreds of millions of dollars of food over, and they're feeding 10 million Russians a day who are dying of starvation. And Lenin is taking the wheat that American taxpayers are sending to Russia to help the starving Russians, and he's selling it on the international market because he needs hard currency for his Comintern so that he can bring down countries like America. That's how it works. So yes, they want to burn it down. It's a religion for them. It's a religious theory. But when you hear it, the main point, I got a little sidetracked as usual, the main point is we want to build a better society. Now you want to build a better society for you. Well, what does that mean exactly? You want to build a better society for mediocre people like you. You want to build a better society for lazy people. You want to build a better society for lazy people who don't have any ambition, who aren't willing to get up and work hard. You want to build a society where all of the hardworking people, all of the disciplined people are brought down to your level, and then you think you can control that society. You want to make it for you. That's why you want this so-called equality. It's not equality of outcome, equity if they want to call it that, that's fine. That's what you want. You want everybody to make the same because you are not willing to work hard enough to make more than you're doing now. So let's take other people's money and give it to us. But mainly, you want to make a society that's better for you. It's not better for people who forget about the people who actually do things, the people that go to work and have jobs and run insurance companies and gas stations. Forget about all of them. You would rather have everybody just sit in the dark, equally cold, than face the fact that somebody's doing better than you because they're working harder. There's a T-shirt that I saw on Ranger Up, and it was something to the effect of, don't complain about the achievements you didn't make because of the work that you didn't do. Something along those lines. Yeah, it's the economics of envy, Jay Coulter says. It's exactly what it is. I could have called it an empire of envy. You have to have a terror state to maintain it because most people want to better their lives, and virtually every human being on the planet, like every other mammal on the planet, works harder for their own benefit than they do for other people's benefits. If it's 4 o'clock in the morning and it's 60 degrees below outside, and there is a sick cow on the community farm that nobody owns, guess who's not getting up to take care of that problem? If, on the other hand, that cow is your sole source of income, you're differently motivated. So they just want a better world for themselves. And if they can't get it, and they can't, because everything they believe is contrary to physics, all of biology is chemistry and all of chemistry is physics. Entropy says it is easier to do less work than it is more work. It is just the law of thermodynamics expressed in politics. They are fighting against, they're agents of entropy that are fighting against higher levels of organization and work and results and all the rest of it. So they just want to see it burn. The classic story is tell this in the Empire of Terror. The classic story is, if all you want to know about communism or Bolshevism is in this one joke that the Russians told each other throughout their 8 decades of misery. A peasant is praying for a cow. He's a tiny little village of just 10 houses there, 10 huts, and this peasant is praying for a cow. He's prays on his knees every day to God, prays for this cow. And he wants the cow, but he says to God, "My dear Lord in heaven, if I had a cow, I'd be able to get up early, and then I could plow more of the fields with a cow than I could with my wife who's pulling the plow. I could have dairy products. We could have milk for our kids. We could sell cheese to the village." He gets down and prays and prays and prays, and one day wakes up, there's this blinding flash of light, and he's got his cow. And sure enough, the guy gets out there and he starts making cheese and milk available for all the kids, and the kids that were starving are not starving anymore. And they're growing food that they couldn't grow because the cow is pulling a plow, and everything is going great. And the guy who lives across the dirt road from this peasant, who's his neighbor, who watches him every day, then he starts getting on his knees, praying, and finally it's a flash of light because the guy says, "Dear God in heaven, please, what I want you to kill his cow." Kill his cow. That's communism right there. Cow for yourself? No, you don't want a cow for yourself. If you had your own cow, you'd have to get up earlier and work harder. And all of the benefits that this guy over here is getting would be yours, but you don't want to do the work that he's doing. You're just too lazy and you're too stupid. So, since I'm not unable, he could pray for a cow, he could get the cow. It's not that he's unable of working hard, he just doesn't want to. He just doesn't want to. So, he wishes God would kill his cow because that guy's making him look bad. Better we all suffer in the dark, starve in the dark together equally than for any one of us to set our own standards of how hard we want to work. And that's the great thing about a free market society. If your goal in life is to be a gamer and you want nothing more to do than play, Call of Duty 75, uh, then you can. If all you want to do is that, then get a job at 7-Eleven or Starbucks, have a one-bedroom or studio apartment, put whatever money you make into constantly upgrading the best computer rig you can, work for 8 hours a day or 6 or whatever it takes to pay the rent and keep the Cheetos coming in, and then just sit there and play video games all day. That's fine with me. I don't care. That's great. If that's what you want to do with your life, fantastic. I'm not going to make you go out there and invent, things or I don't care. It's your free country. Do what you want. But those people, there are people like that who say that that's what I want to do, and therefore I don't want anybody to be living better than me because I like sitting on the couch watching TV all day. It's selfishness. It's selfishness. Hang on a second. Yeah, I hate those people. I hate them. It's a joke from Eric. I'm going to read it even though I don't know how it ends. Comrade Farmer, how goes the potato farm? Oh, Comrade Commissar, if we put the potatoes in a pile, it would reach the throne of God. This is the Soviet Union, says the other guy. There is no God, and there are no potatoes, says the other comrade. Sure, why not? Okay, back to questiones here. Start to run a little out of steam here. For sale, I said. Chris, it's a SpaceX question, and I'm going to pass on just because I talk about it a lot. And again, I genuinely feel bad about this, skipping this many. Here's Steve Young, who we do get a lot, but I'm going to do Steve Young, I'm going to do Roadrunner, and I'm going to do George Freeland, and then I'm going to call it a night. So if I missed you, for God's sakes, please bring them back next week and put second request. That gets my attention. Hey, Monk Trading over there with a super chat says, I've been thinking about it, and I think the only winning policy for abortion across the board would be to force all mothers to see their baby prior. Yeah. That's exactly the point that Scott made on the episode we did not too long ago. He said, just show them the sonogram. You'd cut 80% of that. And there are people, I said, I don't particularly like the way this sounds if you just reduce it to sheer numbers. But, I mean, I don't know what the going price for a healthy baby is for adoption in this country, but it's tens of thousands of dollars. Jeremy and his wife adopted a baby. He was kind enough to call me afterwards and say that the photos that Natasha took of them together are what got them, because there were, again, forgive the language, I don't know what else to say. There were a number of bids on this child, and Natasha's photographs were just so compelling that that's how Jeremy got his daughter, who he named Dagny after some lunatic's brilliant work on what the world is like. What I'm getting at here is, I don't know. This girl was pregnant, a young, healthy girl, and she didn't want the baby, and she ended up making a significant sum of money by carrying that baby to term, and then she also got the satisfaction of seeing that baby go to a really good home. There are market forces at work there. This whole subject is extremely uncomfortable for me ethically because it sounds like babies for sale, but it's not that. It's just babies for sale is what it is. Nevertheless, I knew that, Jay Coulter. I was just joking. Dagny Taggart's obviously an Atlas Shrugged. It's a cool name, but it's part of a solution. All right, Roadrunner New Mexico NM. Is it New Mexico? Will somebody please get me straightened out on this? I keep saying Roadrunner NM. Greetings, friend William. Greetings to you, friend Roadrunner NM. The late great Andrew Breitbart. By the way, the late great Andrew Breitbart, in another 2 weeks, day or two, less than 2 weeks. The late great Andrew Breitbart, my friend in the early days of this strange occupation, on February 29th. Is this a leap year? Don't answer. I'll check it myself. It is. On February 29th of this year, which is 2 weeks from tonight. Hey, you know what? We should do a commemorative episode. That's a good idea. 2 weeks from tonight, my friend Andrew Breitbart will have died 12 years ago. 12 years ago. Seems like yesterday. That's not true. It seems like 3 years ago, 4 maybe. 12 years ago. Anyway, he wasn't exactly. I mean, Andrew was so on the spectrum that you can't really say he was like a friend in the way that you would have other friends, because he was always doing something. But he had the most generous spirit and the sharpest mind, and the people who he did, let into his life to be friends, were amazed at meaning me and Jeremy and a few others, were amazed at his ability to turn hatred into, at the very least, disapproval. All you need to know about Andrew Breitbart is that he was in, I want to say it was a CPAC convention, but wherever they were having this convention at a hotel, he was in the hotel, and there was a group of people out there, like 30 or 40 or maybe more, who had signs they wanted his blood, They wanted Breitbart's blood real bad. He was a racist, a murderer, all the rest of this stuff. So Breitbart goes out there to talk to them, but he doesn't just walk out there to talk to them. He goes out to talk to them on roller skates. Who does that? He went out there, talked to this group of people that were there for his blood on roller skates, just skated out there, started talking, said, why don't we all go talk about this some more over pizza, and took them out to pizza, and that's all you need to know about Andrew Breitbart. Yeah, anyway. Back to the question. Late great Andrew Breitbart stated that politics is downstream of culture. That is the smartest of the many things he said. Since Hollywood appears to be suffering blowback from the public for the extremely woke content they've been producing for the last several years, Star Wars, Marvel, et al., is this an indication that conservatism may soon be increasing in the political realm? Have you noticed any indication of this, and is there anything we can do to speed up the process? I think the answer to this is yes. As an example of how bankrupt Hollywood is, when we don't see them we live in the San Fernando Valley, which is much more like America than actual Los Angeles proper, Hollywood proper. But when we were in Hollywood proper last night, doing the jewelry show thing at the fabulous Los Angeles fashion show, we pass a lot of billboards because it's becoming what was known in the business even when I was in the business starting 20 years 30 years ago. It's getting to be kudos season, where we all congratulate ourselves on how awesome we are, and posters around town now, they blossom like flowers. We have a period where it rains, and then everything turns green for about a month, and then it dries out and it stays brown forever. But it's getting to be kudos season, and so at this time of year in Hollywood, billboards pop up everywhere from either agents or production companies that are putting out billboards that say, for your consideration. You're about to make your Emmy vote or your Oscar vote or your Golden Globes vote, whatever. For your consideration. Here's a gigantic billboard of our client doing some incredible thing on some incredible show. For your consideration. And I saw 7 of those or something. And one of the things that was being promoted the most, this is not a for your consideration thing, it's a new exciting new drama on Netflix, I want to say, called Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is a remake of the Angelina Jolie Brad Pitt movie, which actually was really, really good. So we're not even remaking major projects anymore. We're no longer. We've already hollowed out sucked all the juice out of Star Wars, which is ruined. Star Trek, which is ruined. Marvel, which is ruined. These are fantasy universes, and once you set the rules in those universes, it becomes canon. And so, if Luke Skywalker as an old man, is a reclusive hermit murderer, then that's what he's become. It's done. You can't undo it. People walk away. But now we're down to making an ongoing TV series of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Now, of course, Mr. and Mrs. Smith used to be Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. Now it is unnamed black gentleman and unnamed Asian female. I say unnamed because I have no idea who these people are. And I find myself less interested in it. Not because it's a black male and an Asian female, but because Mr. and Mrs. Smith was a movie that had chemistry between it, and it wasn't an ongoing play. They could have called it Mr. and Mrs. Johnson or Mr. and Mrs. whatever and had an original show, but they had to call it Mr. and Mrs. Smith because they don't have the ability to write an original show. All they can do now is stamp this label on things like, hey, remember this? This was great, wasn't it? Yeah, so come and see this. It's got the same name. That's all they have. That's all they got. And so, there you go. It's utterly 100% bankrupt. And the thought, I mentioned this to Natasha too, as we were driving, I said, here's all these for your consideration billboards that prop up this time of year. And now, when I see, what did I see? I saw some little clip from the Golden Globes or something, some kind of snarky clip or something. But I look at the Oscars and I think, man, for the middle of my life, probably the majority of my life in the middle of my life, I really, really, really wanted to be in that room on Academy Award night, and I'd like to produce something that won an Academy Award. This is before the Hollywood industry went so left. But it's not even a question of it being left-wing anymore. It's been left-wing for a while. I look at the Academy Awards now, and I look at the Emmys, and I think, I cannot believe anybody is watching these dinosaurs. I don't watch movies anymore. To me, all of my entertainment comes through YouTube. I watch, and it's not because of YouTube. It's because there's so much talent in the not just in America, but in the world. There's so much talent that you got probably 4 or 5 billion people with access to YouTube, and these are fascinating people. And 1 in 10 million finds a niche, but there's not a better movie reviewer than Critical Drinker. I've never heard anybody with a better review of movies than Critical Drinker. And so why would I watch what some bozo thinks about, just pick somebody. Matt Damon. I don't care what Matt Damon's in. I don't need to see Matt Damon anymore. I don't care whether he wins an award. I don't even know what the movies are anymore. I don't care. They're dinosaurs. They're fossils. They're just, and they're so fossilized that they're not even aware of the fact that they're fossils, except for one person. Who was it who said this? We're not the cool kids anymore. Was it Jim Carrey? I think it was Jim Carrey. I think Jim Carrey was basically saying, look, we've done such awful things. We put out such bad product. We've tried to force our politics on everybody. I think it was Jim Carrey said, we're not the cool kids anymore. We're just not. We're just it's the annual convention of the wooden wheel spoke and whalebone corset manufacturers. So, boom. Matt Damon admitted that upon winning the Oscar for Good Will Hunting, that he was grateful that he discovered that winning wasn't worth the lifetime of adoration of the award. 570 Rivera says, baby boomers invented everything, nothing left. Well, we certainly didn't invent courage and decency and honor. We degraded those things. Said a little under loss for his review of The Flash, where he said the movie should have X and I. Eric says he was disappointed with his review of The Flash. Those of you who have been paying attention may have noticed that Critical Drinker has been doing quite a deal of work with Daily Wire lately. And I find it a little difficult to believe that he's just suddenly taken such an interest in Daily Wire's products without some form of compensation for it. Just seems like the case, and that's how you lose your audience. Now, I'm not saying I'm losing me. I'm just saying there sure is an awful lot of that. So anyway, you can, you can. The whole purpose of a movie reviewer is that you have to assume that they're impartial. That if they like something, it's because they like it. If they don't, it's because they don't. If you think you can buy a review, then that reviewer, I'm not saying that's what happened by any means, but I mean, obviously Daily Wire is producing counterculture programming, and Drinker is talking about how horribly the mainstream culture has failed, so there's a natural affinity there. I'm just saying, it just seems like quite a lot of it. But to answer your question, yes, the people have given up on mainstream Hollywood completely. And as far as them becoming more conservative, I thought, I'd like to believe they became more conservative, but I think the answer is probably, up until very recently, the answer wasn't so much that people were becoming more conservative, so much as more of them were becoming less liberal, less progressive. But in the last 6 weeks, I'm starting to see signs that Gen Z is going to Trump in huge numbers, like major numbers, and so are Hispanics and blacks. And if this is real, and the fact that I'm seeing it means that there's an awful lot of stuff that is being suppressed, because we all know how that works. If that's actually a thing, then they're in real trouble. Because it's not even because woke. Woke isn't bad because it's left wing. There are plenty of things that are bad because they're left wing. It's not that. Look, Easy Rider is a left wing movie, and Easy Rider is a great movie. All of the classic Bonnie and Clyde is a anti-hero movie. It's a nihilist movie. It's venerating and glamorizing two of the worst people in the period, and that's a great movie. So it's not that these woke movies are terrible because they're left leaning. They've always been left leaning. They're terrible because they're made by people who have no life experiences. They've never done anything, and I don't know. They're just garbage because they're not about anything. And it seems like there is a turn. I'm really feeling it strongly. So we'll see. One of the questions that I had to pass, if I at least give you credit for it. Hang on. There's some great questions I missed, and I feel bad about it, but I do have to. I'm just running out of steam here. It was Eric. He's basically saying he was very surprised that all of the justices, including Kagan, Sotomayor, and I'm no biologist Jackson, were tearing the Democrats' arguments to shred. It looks like a very good chance that we might get a 9-0 decision in terms of Trump name being on the ballot. A 9-0 decision from the Supreme Court is extremely rare. If that's how things play out, if it turns out that the Supreme Court rules that they cannot take Donald Trump's name off of the ballot and it's a vote of 9-0, then that is a crushing defeat. Not for keeping Trump off the ballot. It's a crushing defeat for the tolerance of totalitarianism. Because, as Eric points out, 3 of those 9 votes are people who are appointed by the very people that are in favor of this kind of thing. So that could be a big win. Here's a super chat from our friend Sad Wings, raging $20. Pick yourself up some Tranya, Bill. You need a stiff drink, I bet. Beware the Russian ale. Okay. I don't know what Tranya is, but I'll look it up. Sounds delicious. All right. So, and then I think that's it. One more to go. And then we see. Then we will see what we will see. Last one. A very short one. From George Freeland. who looks very much like a friend of mine named Pete Hurtgen. Hi, George. Um, I spent a modest chunk of my Christmas bonus acquiring a circular slide rule and the last couple weeks learning how to use it. Am I insane? You are bat guano crazy, sir. You are absolutely barking mad nuts. Talk amongst yourselves for 1 second here. This won't take long. Well, it was worth a try. What he's talking about is you come in second, sir. PGT-MR2. Slide rules are a slippery slope. They are indeed. What he's talking about is that, what's the numbers? I want to say it's like a, hang on a second. Sorry, it's got a name. I just want to get it right. E6B. I almost said E2B. An E6B flight computer is one of these guys. Once again, we're going to take the giant risk of plopping this into the comment section here. This is a close-up of one, but I think I'd rather use the close-up just to give you an idea of what this is. So this is an E6B circular slide rule that our friend just had mentioned that he had spent some time learning how to use. Hang on. It's going to be easy on Twitch. YouTube's going to have it go. Oh, it's a different type of file. Damn it. All right, hang on. Hang on. Now we've gone this far, but now we have to follow through. I'll just do it this way. Sure, why not? No, I'll take this one. This is better. So this is a... Are you going to do this to me? Are you? Nope. Okay, good. This is an E6B. Here it is for Twitch. Ooh, that's pretty cool. That's impressive. Hang on, YouTube. We're getting to you. This is so tedious. I'll just leave it like that. And here we go for YouTube, although you're going to, I know this thing's going to jump around. It always does. Come on, you swine. Hey, there it goes. Forget it. It just doesn't, I don't know why. Hang on, I'll do it this way. It's so tedious. I can't even tell you how tedious this is. If I could just drag and drop stuff, life would be actually pretty simple. But no. Hang on. So he basically said he's been working with one of these, and is it a waste of time? And I said, yeah, it is a waste of time. You're bat guano crazy. I missed a super chat. Sorry, Lapco. Hang on a second. Here it comes. I know this is tedious. I got to find a way around this. I think there may be a way with my that switcher that I got. Here we go. That's not the one I want. Sorry. No, let me try it again. Hang on a second. Almost there. I know this is tedious. Believe me, if you think it's boring, it's excruciating for me. There we go. Okay, so this is a an E6B flight computer, or as he said, a circular slide rule. He's there. We go. Finally got it. Okay, so what does he mean by this tongue-in-cheek reference to a genuine miracle? Well, in order to pass your private pilot's license, you have to know the basics of this. And in order to pass your instrument rating, I think you have to know more than the basics. This, my friends, is what the analog world looks like. This is the analog world in a nutshell. This is a slide rule like other slide rules, and the idea of a slide rule is that if you put two pieces of metal that can slide past each other, I don't know what that has to do with naming it a slide rule, but obviously there's some connection. If you do that and you put one scale on one side and a differently calibrated scale on the other side by manipulating the positions of the two relative to each other, you can do some advanced calculations and magic pretty fast. Most of the guys in Mission Control have slide rules. In fact, there's a great scene in Apollo 13 where they say read back the numbers or something, and 15 guys get out their slide rules and they all come up with this insanely accurate, extremely quickly getting the precise number correct. They did all the math in their head or with one of these things. So I just bring this up here just to show you the complexities of what you're required to know if they're going to give you the control of an airplane and let you fly it around. It's not easy to learn, but once you get the basics of it, it's not difficult to learn. And this particular computer, because that's what it is, it's an analog computer, allows you to the number of things that you can determine with an E6B is genuinely astonishing. Crosswind components, if you give it the wind angle, this is like the simple things it does. If you take one of these things and you find out that you're calling up your ATIS, your Automated Terminal Information System, and they're telling you, okay, you're about to land on runway 21 and winds are 170 at 16. That means that the wind is moving 16 knots coming from a bearing of 170. So what is the crosswind component going to be? How much of that wind is going to be bothering you if you're heading on a course of 210 and the wind is coming from 170? What's the crosswind component? And what's the headwind component? This E6B does it just like that. Now, the reason I said you're definitely crazy is for two parts. The first part is you're crazy because all of this stuff is essentially handled by tremendously cool apps that work on your iPad or your iPhone or nowadays, obviously, in most navigation systems on board the airplane. So you're crazy for doing it for that. But the real reason you're crazy is because it is really important that you understand these things, and you deserve an enormous pat on the back for doing it, man. This is crazy like a fox crazy. It's crazy like an eagle crazy. It is something that is alien to us in the digital age. It gets more alien to us in the digital age every day. However, it's important to understand it because unlike a digital computer, which just spits out a number, an analog computer can literally show you, you take here's our runway and the wind speed is coming from this direction. And analog stuff allows you to visualize things, which is why, by the way, this thing is so damn valuable. And nobody realized it until digital watches became common. See that? That's a watch. It's called a watch. And the thing about a watch is, yes, you have to look at it, and it doesn't tell you it's 7:16 p.m. But what it does do is it physically shows you how much space there is. Right now, I'm looking at I always set my watch at a little bit fast because that's how we manage build time. So this looks like something like 8:37 p.m. Hey, turns out it's 8:32, but I'm ahead 5 minutes, so I got it exactly right. So about 8:37 p.m. Okay, this thing I can look at this and I can say how much time is left until 9 o'clock, and I get a physical representation. It's going to be backwards. It's going to be this much time. I know how much time that is. I know how long it takes a hand to move that. Analog shows you not just the answer, in other words, the time. I can tell the time using analog, but analog immediately gives that part of your brain that's the most developed part of our brain, and it's not the ability to do math. Math is a learned behavior. Some people are better at it than others, but all humans have extraordinarily, profoundly developed visual processing centers in the brain. It is, in fact, it is precisely analogous to the difference between having a fast CPU and a fast GPU. The central processing unit or the graphics processing unit. If you're good at doing math and you get digital answers and you write it down, you get all this stuff, you're using the CPU on your brain. But when you look at the relationship of those two hands, you're using the GPU. You're using your highly developed visual processing parts of your brain in order to not only see what the answer is, but to see where the answer is relative to everything else. How much time will it take? It's going to take this much time. That's why a fuel gauge is better in an analog form, and why on glass cockpits, which are completely digital, 100% digital technology on a regular computer screen display using nothing but digital numbers, all of the readouts will be analog readouts, because if this is your fuel state and this is your critical fuel state and this is empty, that's a lot easier to determine than 34,000 pounds, 1,900 pounds, 0 pounds. What's the relationship between those two? You can't tell. But this is full, this is warning, this is empty. Boom. It's awesome. Speaking of which, I have to fill up the car on the way back. So it's time for me to do a fundraiser because I'm about to buy some gasoline in California. My Camaro gets 23, 24 miles to the gallon. Fortunately, I don't have far to drive, but here in California, to fill up my car to its full 17-gallon capacity, it's about $100. It's about a C note. It used to be a Lincoln would get you there. I was not old enough where $1 could fill up your tank, but I was old enough where a Lincoln would get you there. And then suddenly you had to have a Hamilton, and then you had to have a Jackson, then you had to have 2 Jacksons. Now you have to have a Franklin to fill up your car. Thanks, Joe. Although Joe Biden has done more for the energy independence of this country than any other president in history, and all you have to do is ask him. Okay, now I was told that I missed a super chat. Lab coat says I missed a super chat. Sadwing Raising, I got that super chat. Oh, here it is. Thank you. Any thoughts on the Corman-Shatner film, The Intruder? I think it's a pretty subversive film. Shatner, like the fake 80s televangelists that drove me away from the right in the 1980s. Isn't that interesting and sad? Now, I haven't seen it. It sounds interesting. Shatner's like the fake 80s televangelists that drove me away from the right in the 80s. And the reason I think it's interesting is, I don't blame you. I'm not saying you made it up. But when people say, oh, you conservatives just want nothing but a Christian nation, I say, I don't. I really don't. And I'm not saying they're not out there, but I don't know a single Christian ever that has ever said that in my presence. Never, ever have I heard a Christian in my company. I'm not saying they're not out there, but I am saying they are a vanishingly small percentage of the Christian population. I've never heard a Christian say that. Likewise, I have never, ever, ever heard any member of the United States military ever say, hey, you know what, we ought to invade this country and keep it because we ought to get more territory. We need to militarily conquer this country because we want to own the land. We just want it for ourselves. Never heard it. Never. So, there you go. All right. This one is a mere 2 hours and 13 minutes. My God, it's not even halfway to that's actually kind of shocking. And what's also shocking is this would be 1/12 of a Stratathon. That's good though, because it means that by the end of the Stratathon, I will be exactly like Jimmy Stewart at the end of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. You won't send me your money because of your desire for knowledge. You'll do it out of raw pity, and that's the theory behind the minimally viable product School of Business, which I not only am a member of, but a founder of. So there you go. All right, I think I'm done here. That's what I think. Yeah, that's right. So just try and stop me. Yeah, let me get my comments back so I can find out who's heartbroken and who's been naughty and who's been nice. Sometimes people scream at me through the ether, and this is the method that they choose to do it. Okay. Yeah, it looks like we're good. Good to go. Steve Whoop says, by the way, I checked the other day and can't undo your membership. I hate to end on like the note of screeching brakes. If you're serious, Steve, this is something that we pride ourselves on, is that we make it very easy to cancel your membership. If it turns out that there is that you tried to or almost, that this, I take this with, you have no idea how serious I take this. This is, I advertise the fact that it's easy to cancel your membership. You said it just didn't work. I got the website to 80% before I got buried in this never-ending story. And so we have to get that last 20%. But if that's the case, I'm going to get on that right away, because I find that repulsive, frankly. I have not only repulsive, I find it common, where it becomes virtually impossible to cancel a subscription. I find that to be such an insult and such a crummy, low base, venal way to run a company. It's like somebody says, I don't want to pay your product anymore. It's like, well, we'll make it impossible, damn near impossible, for you to figure out how to stop paying us. I just find that just reprehensible. Yeah. Ace Affinity says, whenever a membership is canceled, an angel loses his wings. Absolutely right. And there's a gong, and not a little ding. It's like a boom, boom, boom. Now, I had it last week. It says it does not remember your login that I have seen. Oh, thank you. Well, I'm going to check it. AOC. It's saying it's not remembering you when you log in. Are you absolutely sure you clicked the remember me on the member page? Because yes. You will admit that it's a little tough. yes. I would remember there was I couldn't think of the mnemonic that I would use to remember the thing I was not able to remember. Yes is like Ioyas. It's like the Brooklyn thing. You saved my life. Yes. That's what I got to. That's just remember that guy. All right. Anyway, I'm out of here. So this show is made possible, believe it or not, by the members of BillWhittle.com, who continue to keep the electricity flowing. And if we have to go to gas power or candle power, or use candles made out of, and fire up the internet using tallow candles with wicks from shoelaces, then that's what we'll do. By God. Anyway, thanks as always to the members. Thanks to all the folks who are here live. We will start to zero in both the timing and the location on the Eclipse-a-thon as we get closer to that, and the rest of it is the rest of it. A small afterthought. It's because this will appear before our next stress-free lounge. Pleasant afterthought. It's an entirely different topic. I usually end with the members' thank you, but consider this a encore. For reasons I cannot explain, absolutely mysterious to me. I'm looking at our views, which have been dialed down. And I know they've been dialed down because when we started doing Right Angles, we were getting 40, 50,000 views a show, and then suddenly, the next day, we were getting 19,000. Consistently here, and then overnight consistently here. That's not people falling off the wagon over time. That's clearly an algorithm adjustment. This is an important point. I did my right angle. I did this week's right angle on this. Having had that algorithm dial down the views for as long as they did, I was convinced that it was not possible, that the algorithm had capped the number of views for a right angle. I didn't come to this conclusion so much consciously as I just began to realize, Now a really good right angle is like 12,000, 13,000 views. And so I figured that's the cap that the algorithm has put on the shows. And it's really depressing. And then for reasons that I cannot explain, the right angle we did on the trucking thing going to the border got 50,000 views. Now, let me tell you why that's important. I don't know why it got 50,000 views, but what is important is I was allowed to get 50,000 views. And so my right angle this week is going to be an experiment where all we're going to do is ask you to like and make a comment. That's the whole thing. I've got a little story there, but essentially what it is as an experiment, could you 100% be sure to like this video and write anything in the comment section. Hey, great show, anything, just write anything. As an experiment to see if we can test this theory. So it'd be interesting to see. All right, so that'll do it. Thanks again for joining us. Congratulations on working that flight computer there, lad. It's a heck of an achievement, and I'm proud of you. Long distance proud of you. Secondhand proud of you. And so we'll see you later. Let's go ahead and we'll close out Twitch first. Thanks, Twitch. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you probably Monday night for Stratosphere Studio. Hooray! All right, now we got rid of the lunatics and the fanatics. Now we can really get down to business and talk what's on our minds, because that's what YouTube is known for. YouTube. If YouTube stands for anything, it's for the freedom of expression of individual, mature people to express their thoughts in the community of ideas without thought of consequence or anything. You know, there's a bunch of things that that I'd like to talk about now that the Twitch people have gone, you know, without censorship. And now that I'm here talking on YouTube,